So, I am here to talk to y'all about this, not your model minority. Also, I just thought this was fun. I found this little thing, You're the Ox, right? And I was like, obviously Asians aren't a monolith and we ain't all Chinese, but like this is a baller like Google slide thing I found and I'm gonna use it.
You look so proud.
Right? Look at that.
To
Look
the
at that
sunset.
ox. He's like, yo, check out my golden hat. I'm killing it. Um, but yeah, so I want to start out here really quickly by running y'all through some statistics because I think it's important to recognize the context for why we're finally having these AAPI conversations in culture and exactly how that relates back to the concept of model minority. This is going to be a little hard to hear, so like preserve your light, you know? So to start out, 145%. That is how much AAPI hate crimes have surged since the start of the pandemic. It is due to a great many things, in no small part due to the previous president's hateful comments and vitriol on the way that he has inspired hatred. Yes, on one hand, he was specifically talking about Chinese Americans. On the other hand, when you're looking through a veil of hatred, it's all about otherism, right? Like you'll target anybody who doesn't look like a white American or even doesn't look like you. I'm sure some of these hate crimes were probably perpetrated by basically anybody who wasn't Asian American. Now we're going to get a little more specific. And like I said, it's going to get a little difficult. 833% is how much the hate crime has increased in New York City. 200% in Philly, and 100% in LA. And I pulled all these statistics from the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism. So this is like, these are the people who study this stuff when it happens. You can look up their fact sheet. I can post a link later on, but it's important to have these contexts here. And the reason why it's important to have these conversations and to point these out is because it sucks that it had to get to this point for Asian Americans to finally be part of the conversation about racism and how it directly impacts us as an Asian American Pacific Islander community. So the model minority myth is the myth that perpetuates the idea that Asian Americans are the quote unquote perfect minority who achieve the American dream through hard work and diligence. It's the thing that gets people thinking, oh, Asians, they're all doctors, they're all lawyers, they all have a good head on their shoulders, they're all straight A students, they all don't do anything. And it's this concept that's perpetuated on the fact that our parents' trauma responses and the way that they decided to react to the way the world was treating them, whether it's during the Transatlantic Railroad, whether it's during World War II, Japanese people being stuck in internment camps, whether it's how Filipino people were treated when we were being forced to, and not forced, but when we were being brought to this country as exploited cheap labor. We all generally culturally responded as like, we have to keep our heads down if we want to survive. That was how our parents and our parents' parents decided to survive their traumas, which is fine. That was what they needed to do, but it was taken advantage of, right? So the reason why this is problematic is for a diversity of reasons, but I've listed them here. First off, it ignores diversity between multiple cultures, right? Like Asian Americans are the model minority. Well, first of all, there is so much diversity between Asian Americans, like between Filipino communities and Chinese communities, Korean communities, Vietnamese communities, Indian communities. Yes, Indians are Asian, like all that, right? There's so much difference in that. And then it also perpetuates us as foreigners, calling us the model minority, calling us the model group. It's like, yeah, you're the model minority. Asian Americans are model because you're Asian American. It's always with that attachment. We're never like, even though like Loy, right? You're fifth generation Asian American. Like your family's been here for 5 generations, but you're still portrayed as separate from just full American. It also erases racism that Asian Americans experience. Like I was saying, it sucks that things had to get to this point. Like we had to straight up die at a higher rate than we were already dying for people to recognize, oh, Asian Americans experience racism too, but I thought that they were living the American dream. And then it makes us monolithic, which comes back to the ignoring diversity between multiple cultures, but also monolithic in terms of just between person to person. Not all Chinese people are like Jackie Chan. Like, calm the hell down. It's not how it works. So why was the myth created? It actually surprisingly wasn't even created to have anything to do with us. It was initially created to perpetuate anti-blackness and pit Asian Americans against other racial minorities, specifically Black people. It was the exact same thing. And I talked about this during the lightning talk last year. For those of you who, last month or a couple months ago, for those of you who weren't able to attend that, whiteness doesn't actually exist. It was invented in America in the early 1800s because the aristocracy of that time period had to deal with a rebellion. It was called Bacon's Rebellion, against poor white people who felt like they weren't being dealt a good hand. Instead of doing things that were decent and treating them fairly, they're like, no, 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 you're fine because we're not treating you like these people of color. And that's where whiteness came to be. And so the concept of the model minority was the exact same process. It was a lot of these Asian Americans are getting really angry at how we're treating them. They're the model minority now. And also all the other people are going to treat them decently because they're the model minority. It's anti-blackness. It was created to oppress. It was created to oppress us and to help us oppress other people. This is just a really great quote. Greg Orton is the National Director of the National Council of Asian Pacific Americans. Last I checked, I'm pretty sure he still is. But essentially, it's just for people to assume we are okay, that we don't have any reasons to complain, speaks to the work that needs to be done, which very smoothly transitions me into what we're going to do today. So really quickly, I just want to take a moment. I'll introduce myself in full context, and then I'm going to call you all out individually to introduce yourselves. And it's just going to be a real, kind of like what we were doing, but more expansive, just open discussion about what it is. So I am Jemarc. I am Filipino American. I am a military brat. Parents born in Cebu. So I don't speak Tagalog or understand Tagalog. Granted, I don't speak my parents' language of Bisaya either, but like I can understand it pseudo. Already not monolithic in the Philippines. And the reason why understanding the model minority myth and the reason why understanding what it means to be Asian American is so important to me is that like I spent my entire life being put on like, you're Asian, you're cool, you're Asian, you're cool, that like I didn't even realize all the ways that I wasn't being represented in everyday culture. Like the fact that my only hero that looked like me growing up was Dante Bosco, Rufio, Zuko, all that good. Yeah, you get it, Lloyd. Y'all can't see it in the audience, but Lloyd just got hella hype and I felt it. But the fact that that was a thing. And so, it's like Lex was saying during lightning talks, it's our responsibility to continue these conversations, not only to preserve our culture, but to make sure our experiences are being seen. So I'm going to pass it on to Loy real quick, because Loy, you're right there with me during that whole thing. Tell us about yourself and your heritage as well, please.
Sure. So my name's Loy Lee. I'm a stand-up comedian, stand-up guy. I am, it's a little fuzzy, third, fourth, fifth generation Chinese American from Boston. I never went to college. I didn't even apply. I have been doing stand-up for the last 10 years, professionally for the last 5. I live in Las Vegas. I'm married to a Filipina, which is, an experience in and of itself. But for the most part, I never felt like I fit in. So most of my stand-up comedy is for the people that don't fit into what America thinks that we're supposed to be. I have my own podcast called the Short, Pale, and Handsome Podcast. I have my own album called Asian Privilege. You can find me on YouTube. That's it.
Yeah, and we're going to give you all a chance to shout out your stuff too, because like if y'all really want to support Asian Americans, don't just go to talks like this. Like just support our hustles. That's all I really like. If y'all really want to show support for the Asian American experience and your people, just throw money at us. That's what we're really expecting here. Like, come on now. Let's go. We're going to go ahead and move on to Meg, because I know you were hanging out with us kind of in silence, incognito. So go ahead and tell us about yourself, Meg.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. So I am Meg, and I'm a Chinese Canadian, and I'm in Vancouver, and I'm only 23, so definitely the baby of this group. And it was really interesting hearing all of your stories earlier on in the event. And I'm actually first generation immigrant, so I came to Canada when I was 2 years old, and thankfully grew up in a neighborhood where there are relatively many Chinese people, but I definitely experienced a lot of subtle racism, and definitely am experience a lot of challenges with the expectations that we have as the quote unquote modern minorities as well. And especially in pursuing more unconventional paths now. I'm just finishing up my degree in business school, which of course is very conventional for a Chinese Canadian as well. but I'm pursuing a lot of creative stuff. So I also have my own podcast. It's called I'm in My 20s, and it's to have more meaningful and kind of difficult conversations about stuff that people don't typically talk about. And I really do advocate for talking more about vulnerable things, especially about our feelings and the challenges of growing up Asian in North America, and have had a lot of experience with that in my family, lots of challenging conversations, and definitely have a lot of thoughts to share. So I'm excited to be part of this panel.
Thank you. Let's move on to Jonah. Jonah, hello.
Hi everyone, my name is Jonah. I am a second generation Filipino American. I'm born and raised in the DMV. For those of you who don't know, that's DC, Maryland, Virginia. I am also on a unconventional path. I am an actress, producer, and writer, and I usually write stories about the Asian American experience for people to actually, Asian Americans to actually be in those roles. So that's my little spiel.
Please cast everybody here in what you're doing. That's just, we want to be there. And Kuya P!
What
Kuya
up?
P, you
What
got
up?
so
What
many
up?
titles, my man. I'm interested in seeing what's gonna happen here.
Man, well, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here with you, Jemarc. Thank you for the invite. Lloyd, my brother, good to see you, and Meg and Jonah, it's a pleasure to meet you both. I'm probably the oldest cat here on this panel. Because I am older than you, Lloyd, right? Yeah, I think I'm older than you. Actor, producer, filmmaker, podcaster. I write with and produce with the Nerds of Color. I also have my own shindig called NRW, where nerds rule the world, where I've had many of these cats on here on as well. Just building, man. I've been doing it for a long time, but got mad depressed last year with everything that was going on until Loy put the spark back in me to jump off, and I created Show Pal Show as a result, in ode to my Filipinos out there representing. So Jonah, with you being Filipino, I need to have you up on there. But yeah, just representing our culture, and just now finding that niche, finding our love and that passion again, and that spark has just kind of really blossomed for me within this past year. Like, things are going insane right now for me that I'm so busy. I've actually was recording all day today, and so I apologize if I'm a little tired, but I'm got to be here for my kuya Jemarc, and also talk about our people, because what we're doing right now is what matters. Because again, we'll say it all the time, representation matters, and this is just beautiful. And I'm looking forward to hearing and listening to all of you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, and this is all being recorded. So by all means, please share it on all your platforms, because it doesn't make sense to do it and then not share it, right? Also, for the record, Kuya is a Filipino word. He is Filipino. We don't just have a random non-Filipino guy running something called the Show Pal Show, right? Like, I got to stress that.
I'm sorry,
could
my
happen.
bad. Yeah,
It could happen.
Mixed kid growing up Filipino. My dad, I have the classic Navy story. I think that was you as well, Jemarc, right? Navy kid. Yeah, so same deal growing up. My dad's English, German, and my mom's Filipina. Met in Cavite City, and now I'm here.
Yeah, the only difference for me is that my story wasn't an American coming to the Philippines to find a wife. I'm not saying your dad did that. I'm just saying that like you know, my dad did join the military from the Philippines. But yeah, so let's get this conversation started. And the idea, the kind of, just so y'all know where my mind is at, is it something that I want us to come at this from an angle of like, man, this sucks. But also I want it to come at an angle of like, there's a lot of joy here too, right? There's a lot of opportunity for turn and change. If this was Jemarc of last year, I would have been like, let's just talk about it sucks and I'll be in our feelings and then go to bed angry. And I kind of want to try to avoid that as much as we can. But we got to start with the heavy stuff. We got to start with experiences. And I think part of talking about the model minority myth, first off, is just talking about like, what are, it's just talking about like hidden racism, right? So I'd like to ask all of you, and by all means, I'm sure everyone will be respectful if someone starts talking, you'll figure it out between yourselves, because we're Asian, we got to be polite. But but like, what are some experiences that you've had where you experienced racism firsthand, right? And it doesn't have to be the vitriol like, get the fuck out of my house, you gave me corona. It could even just be as simple as like, hey, can you help me figure out my math homework because you're Asian, right? Like, just stuff like that, experiences that have kind of stuck with you in a weird way and like make you feel real sticky, and that maybe you didn't even realize it until you were the age you are now, that like, oh, that was fucked up.
I can start if that's okay. I'd love to talk about an experience I had in grade 8. So first year of high school, I think I was around 14, 15. So I applied to be part of a mini school program. So essentially in this program, I'd be studying all my same courses with the same group of 30 kids. And I was actually one of the only Chinese people in that program. So basically everybody was like white or any other race. And for some reason, I just felt extremely disconnected. And it wasn't until then that I questioned why I felt that way. And then in that moment, I realized that all my life, I'd grown up, all my friends were all Chinese people. Like I could only name like white people, like the amount of white friends I had, I could probably name them on like one hand. And all my friends are Chinese people. And I never questioned that until then. And I was like, why do I feel so disconnected? And then I kind of realized that they were kind of like isolating me and like singling me out in certain circumstances. I think a lot of that had to do with kind of the stereotype that Asian people are, they're like boring, they're kind of just book smart, they're not the type to party, they're, just all these like general stereotypes. And because of that, I would just automatically exclude it just because of my race. And I just didn't feel like I belonged. And so because of that, I actually had to drop out of the program because I just couldn't take it. It was like the hardest year of high school for me. And so after dropping out, and then I was kind of like reunited with my fellow Chinese and Asian friends. But then I think that experience changed me because I realized that we have so many like subconscious biases against other races. And why is it that like Chinese people also tend to like stick together and single out white people at the same time? And then the white people do the same to us. And throughout high school, it was like that same thing. All the white people were friends with each other. All the Chinese people were friends with each other, but there was like barely any sort of overlap there. So I just found that very interesting. So that was my experience.
The reason why Chinese people stick to each other, or people stick to each other, because they don't want to deal with that shit. Like,
Yes, I was about to say that shit right there. Yes.
Why would I
that's real
subject
life.
myself to that bullshit for no reason? Get out of here. I can swear, right? It's okay.
Yeah,
Or should I
no,
not swear? Okay.
we're being real.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, but yeah,
mhm.
that's real. Lo, you wanted to say?
I mean, being a stand-up comic and being in the room, back of the room every night, several, 6 nights a week, you hear all of the jokes. You hear, and I always say that when a comic is bombing, the life raft is an Asian joke. It doesn't matter the context. It doesn't matter what they were saying beforehand. It's just like, hey, I mean, under that context, the stereotypes could be worse, I mean, the worst one is the man size, but everything else is like either we're horrible drivers or we're the best drivers, we're either horrible dancers or we're the best dancers. It's very, very jarring. I think one of the weirdest interactions that I realize now as an adult is like the passive aggressive microaggressions of conversation, where random people will come up to you and just be like, hey, are you Filipino? No, or Korean or whatever it is. Turns out they're guessing that I am whatever their wife or their girlfriend is. And they just want to connect to me on that level. Like, oh, I'm not Filipino. And they go, oh, well, my wife is Filipino. Let me tell you a story about a woman you don't know from a place you've never been to. And it's at this point, I feel like a hostage in this situation where like I don't care about, like, you want to know where I'm from. People ask, right? I think the people who want to know what your ethnicity is, if you just wait long enough and have a conversation, we'll tell you if it's important. If it's not important, it won't get brought up, and it's not important. If you want to talk to me about China, about Hong Kong, we might as well talk about Dagestan. I know more about Dagestan than I know about Hong Kong.
I want that on your tombstone.
I know more about Dagestan, okay? But it's very strange, and microaggressions either look like that, or it's like, hey, are you Korean? I'm not Korean. You look Korean. Well, I'm not. Well, you look like a guy that I work with that's Korean, and then they go off on these long stories. Like, that shit doesn't matter at this point. And I find it frustrating and offensive, actually. I can finally say it. I'm at a point in my life where that conversation, having to sit through that bullshit, is offensive.
Can we also talk about just with you being a comedian, right? It's just that like if you want to make jokes at Asian American expense, just be clever. Like I'm like, of course it's offensive and that's a default, but like it's been done. Like, it just means you're not, like, it just means you're a bad comedian. And people are like, you just don't have a sense of humor. I'm like, if you made some timely joke at my expense as a Filipino man and managed to like make that shit slap, like, that'd be hilarious. But the issue is like, they got nothing left to give. And like, the times
it's a Hail
forward,
Mary.
right?
So
Yeah.
one of my comic friends, he made the joke about, oh, APA, Asian American hate is not a real thing. If you think that that's not a real thing, drive behind one, And I was like, hey, yeah, pretty hacky, pretty low. But I was like, here, if you don't believe Asian American hate is real, drive behind someone who's driving behind an Asian. Then you can see the hate is, like just layering it one layer, just being a little bit smarter. It's like, but people don't because it's such an easy laugh. Because at the end of the day, you could just throw it out there as a lifeline, and that is where we are in America. It's funny.
Oh, they have a small penis. Ha 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 ha.
Ah.
That's also, I've actually, yeah, speaking of making it clever, and we're just gonna get down and deep in it. You remember when we did Comic-Con with Patrick, that was one of my jokes, flipping that on its head. Instead of talking about like Asians having small penises, I was like, it's gotta suck being a black man and everyone expecting you to have a big penis. Like
Yeah.
that was the joke.
Or-
Like
or
I
it's
am
like-
impressive no matter what I do.
Yeah.
Like the standards are
Yeah.
so low, I don't make anyone happy. But like as a black man, I am so sorry that people have put that pressure on you. Like that's taking a stereotype and flipping it on its head.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we have small penis. How do you know? How many Asian penises have you seen?
How many of you held gently in your hand?
Yeah, it's like, is that a thing that you look up on Pornhub? I bet you it's not even a category. Like,
But it's a kink. All right. Anyway, let's move on from that.
for my wife.
Who else has some thoughts or wants to speak up before Loy and I co-opt this into just a full comedy stand-up routine?
So we're talking experiences, right?
Yeah, like just times,
So I would,
and it could be internalized too, which I'll talk about for
Yeah.
myself, but just for you.
I feel that. Same with Loy, all these little micro transgressions, and with Meg as well. Growing up, man, I actually, that's why I did show Pal Show to kind of explore just some of that, growing up. One of the things I told on the show was that when I was living in Washington State, we had moved there. Like that was my dad got out the military and had retired, and we moved up there. And like my second week living there, I went to go play ball, ball in one hand, riding my bike, going down the street. When all of a sudden, like a bunch of white dudes in a, it was something like you would see in a film, in a red Ford pickup truck with like, it was like straight up like I said, out of film. I had like the lawn equipment in the back, and just coming down the street behind me. I looked back because I could hear them. They're loud as hell, and they stopped. And I'm still pedaling, going down the street, and all of a sudden I hear their engine rev up, and then they're going fast, jumping onto the sidewalk, and I'm like, oh shit, they're trying to run me over. And threw my ball down, started pedaling. All of a sudden, as I'm pedaling, looking back, there was a tree overhanging the sidewalk. I was going, super fast, basically, pedaled straight into the tree, got messed up, and, was just like sprawling on the ground, bike messed up. And then they stop, pull over, and then just yell every racial epithet at me. And that was hard. And that was, here I just moved to this area, and now I'm experiencing something that I never experienced in the South, because I actually came to Washington State from Mississippi. And I'm talking Mississippi, Gulfport, Biloxi, Mississippi, where the school population was 75%. It actually was like 65% African-American, and then the other percentage other, to Washington State, where the school that I was at when I finally went to started school, like the week or two after, was like the difference, 65% white, and then the other percentage other. So it was kind of crazy. Everybody tells you when you go to the South, it's going to be super racist. Here, these white people were like, super racist to me. And I'll just, put a button on this at, a couple weeks in, going into school, I saw some of those guys in my PE class, and we were getting ready to go shower, but I recognized dudes, and I was about to have my revenge. And but the good Asian kid that doesn't usually get in trouble went over there and whipped his ass, along with a couple of friends of mine, and just got a little bit of revenge. Not a good thing, but hey, they shouldn't have done what they did. But that was one of the big major experiences where I got really in trouble from my mom and dad, but they understood because of what went down. But yeah, just growing up with that, and just, growing up when I graduated high school later on, loving and learning about my culture, but being the mixed kid that didn't speak Tagalog, and kind of being the left one out of the rest of my other Filipino friends, and loving more about the culture than they did, because they were very they wanted to be white, and we can talk on that as well. When they just wanting to be into the in crowd or whatever. That's why like a lot of with like manga anime at that time, for me, people are like, yo, why aren't you manga anime? Man, all those cats wanted to be white. Look at the Street Fighter shit. Look at Ryu and all of that. Like, I couldn't get down with it because I was prideful for my culture, but these characters in like with Dragon Ball, Goku had to become whiter with his more evolution of his power, and you know what I'm saying, all that kind of stuff. But that's a whole nother thing. And yeah, man, so that just bothered me. So like I take pride in myself and my people, but it's been hard, and then you kind of figure out your ways of living in the world and surviving in the world, and that's what I think we're all doing here. But yeah.
I will say, for me as a Filipino person who grew up in Japan, like born and raised in Japan, I like hate like I loved manga and anime, and then I came to California and I wanted nothing to do with it because all the white kids were asking me to like speak Japanese, and were like shoving like, so when weeaboo became a thing, I was like so angry because weeaboo wasn't just like loving culture like otaku is, which is its own insult in Japan, but America was just like loving and appreciating anime culture. Weeaboo was like, I am Japanese, right? Like I can't stand that. But yeah, that was real life.
I hated anime and all of that because I used to get beat up over it, Like you're like, oh, you're the free, you like Star Wars, you like anime? We're whooping your ass tonight at 3 p.m.
You had those 1980s movie bullies who like specified a time and place to get your ass whooped.
Yeah, that's how gentlemen work. With time, place, there's no confusion.
That's how I rolled back then. After fourth period, it's on. Like,
yep. Be prepared, stretch, get a little hydrated if you got to.
Man, bullies are so different today. They just jump your ass out of nowhere. But man, I miss the times of like, have you hydrated? Did you get some of your electrolytes in? This is still gonna be an ass whooping, but like I want to make sure you're physically ready for it.
Right, because I don't want to get sued when you bump your head because you weren't hydrated,
Jonah, do you have any?
Yeah. So specifically, just within like the Asian community itself, I remember going to like auditions, and they were run by these white people who want to put on a show about East Asian plays or East Asian cultures. I'm like, what the fuck do you know about that? But okay, I go into this audition and they don't even really give me a time of day. They cut my audition off straight. And it's like, but the casting call is open for all Asian Americans. And I get it, if you just specified it would have been fine, but also you're running this play, which I'm also questioning as well. And that's just a very specific experience. I mean, there's a ton that I'm sure that we all have gone through, but it's crazy. Also, you guys were talking about Asian like sex or fetishes. Like, I feel like, on Hinge, people ask really crazy things because I look this way. And it's like, well, would you be asking that to, I mean, I don't know, maybe they would be, but I feel like it's very common for me. But when I ask like my other friends who aren't Asian about their like Hinge swipes and DMs, it's a very different conversation. And I'm not even like posting pictures that would, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like normal Hinge online dating profile. So I don't know. It's just like all of those things are some of the experiences that I've had.
So before I dive into fetishization, I'm an old married man, and Loy is, and Kuya P is. What the hell is Hinge? Do you guys know? I want to be cool.
I think
for
it's
these
like
young
Tinder.
Kids.
I think it's like Facebook, but with sex. I don't know.
Like these young kids are too cool for us guys. We gotta go. We gotta. They have breakout rooms in Zoom. We'll be right back, y'all.
You have sex on your phone? What?
What do you have sex on the phone, like physically? Or is that, there's that great Monty Python joke where the woman is like, I'm tired of all this sex on TV. I keep falling off. One of my favorite Monty Python jokes. But yeah, and the fetishization is wild, right? Because it's always fetishization of Asian women, and at the other end of the spectrum, all Asian men are ugly. And it's just like, Asian men are unattractive. They have small penises. They're scrawny dudes. They're nerds. And Asian women are like these quote unquote yellow goddesses for them to like imagine, who just serve them in everything because Asian. And it's that model minority idea, right? Like, they'll be subservient to me, the man, blah, 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 blah. My mom would have whooped my ass if she ever caught me talking to a woman like that, period. But yeah, and in terms of my experience, and we'll kind of dive into like how are things changing? How have we seen changes? How can we see responsibilities for changes? And also just like, how are we ourselves not representing this concept of model minority? But mine, and it's a story I've told plenty of times. Patrick, Kuyapi, you know this story. Like literally, we met on this story, and it was that for me, I've always been a creative. I've always been a storyteller, and it wasn't until my young adult life that I looked back at all the stories I wrote as a kid, and all of the lead characters were white men. And that's that internalized shit. That's the stuff that for me is like almost in a weird way more harmful than like outright killing us. Almost in a weird way more harmful than like chasing Kuya P down with a truck or like fetishizing, just because like that means it's in us, right? That's the stuff that we grew up believing, to the extent that like we can't be the heroes of our own story. It has to be a white man who has to come to save us. And that comes back to the idea of like Filipino people that Kuya P knew growing up, that I knew growing up, that like they were more embedded in the culture, but they wanted to be white. Like that's the stuff that really that comes into the responsibility of breaking cycles, is that bringing that education to the table and making people aware.
I go off on tangents when it comes to things like this, but representation matters, you know, especially growing up. Like, do you see any Asian superheroes? And all the Asian superheroes or Asians that may be superheroes are all martial artists. You know, they're just like, oh, just hardworking and just do kung fu. And it's until you do kung fu, and then, you know, 3 months going to the mall for kung fu, it's like, this is not made for me. Like, why can't we just be born like Superman? You know, why can't we just be a superhero? Why do we have to work towards it? You know, I go on tangents. Like, all of the Asian superheroes in comic books are the worst representation out there. Why they're really, really smart, we're the villain, you know, or we're kung fu artists. I mean, even Shang-Chi, that's the whole combination. His dad's a villain, he's a martial artist, he clones himself thousands times over, they all look alike. Like, how is this not every horrible trope?
Well, it's also, how do you represent their personalities too, right? Like when Doctor Strange came out and they cast, what was it, Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One. And the argument by Marvel was like, we don't want to do that. We don't want to stereotype Asian people into this role. But
So
then
let's not even have them. Let's just not have them at all.
It doesn't, yeah. So like, and the issue was that like the idea was like they didn't want to stereotype. And then they had a woman who was the Ancient One who acted like a normal person who happened to be an Ancient One, and then had a dude who looked like the most stereotypically Asian monk possible in the movie. Like, you could have just cast like a young Asian dude to act exactly like Tilda Swinton and add their own flavor and mix to it, and not have them be like a goddamn stereotype who happened to be the Ancient One. Like, that's all you had to do. And like, I haven't seen the Shang-Chi trailer, just because I do have like really like a lot of confusing feelings about that. But
I have trust issues.
Exactly. But my hope is that the movie is just like, I mean, it's made in 2021, right? Like, just make him a dude who happens to realize he has this destiny or whatever. He doesn't have to be every stereotype in the book to represent these characters.
You know, here's a funny little exercise. Whenever there's an Asian person as a hero, check to see who the villain is.
Yes.
Think of every movie. Exactly. Yep, there it is. We can't be the heroes unless we're the villains as well.
I just want to add, though, as y'all can see, you know, a big Marvel stan, and you know, I write for the Nerds of Color. You know, I run NRW. When I started experiencing that and seeing that, you know, so like, we didn't see, like you said, Jemarc, we weren't seeing that representation. We weren't seeing our characters. So I gravitated toward characters like Peter Parker, because he was, you know, he was going through the same experiences I was. He was being bullied. You know, he tried everything but still failed. But, you know, regardless, he still, you know, did what he did, was a hero for the greater good. So I also gravitated towards the X-Men, because they were outcasts, and they're also at that time international, where we could see a Storm, we saw Sunfire, that I know Loy has in his act, and Colossus, and all these other characters where we could somewhat see ourselves. But we identified with those characters because they were different, they were mutants. So that is what we found. But as you know, comics is, and as I was being bullied, because that's you know, like I said, with the incident that happened, but just growing up, not connecting, knowing that I was different, never being treated, even though I'm a mixed kid, I'm part white, never being treated like I was white, and then not being treated like I was Asian because I didn't speak Tagalog. I was a social outcast. I didn't have anything. So I put myself into reading these books, finding my own worlds, and that creativity then sparked my imagination. And where I would always be told that I couldn't be that, I took that, and I still take it to now. I'll create my own shit. I created my own characters. I created my own superheroes. That led into acting. That led into production. That led into me now kicking ass where I'm at now in the world. So regardless if these bigger companies ain't going to give us that representation, take that energy and create that into a positive energy and build. And there's so many other characters. As we're talking Marvel, we're talking DC. I found out at that time, Image Comics, a lot of my creators that I loved were Filipino. Will Portacio that created Bishop, Jim Lee over at the X-Men. They started this company called Image Comics, and then we were getting our characters there where we had representation. So there's material out there, but it's just not being promoted. So you just got to find it and then support those cats that are creating these creations for you to see that representation. And then later on, eventually, hopefully we'll have people in the big, financing situations, publishing situations that could put us out there and market us out there. But the content is there. So when you get that negative energy, for those people that are listening, I just want to say, man, just fuck them all and create your own shit and just represent, man, because that's what we can do. But yeah, I noticed that very early on, man, that, they weren't going to give it to me. And if people, they're going to call you names. So you kind of seclude into your own little world. I read so many books, read so many comic books. And then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna find and create my own thing and then give that back to the people and then help that inspire.
Yeah, and support your friends at the small scale, right? Like we talk a lot about like these content creators are out there, like they created Bishop. They're now creating movies for us, and that's great. But the only reason why they're making it big is because somebody supported them when they were starting out. And this is more of a sickness of just American perception more than anything, like not even just specifically Asian American, but it's like all these people are like, oh, none of this stuff is out there. But you have your friends like Lloyd, like Jonah, like Meg, like myself, like Kuya P, out here hustling, like trying to get people to look at the shit we're making. And then everyone, oh, I don't have the time. Because you're putting time into stuff that is being made in the mainstream, usually by white people. So it's like you do have the time, but if you're not willing to put the time and energy into supporting your friends who are literally trying and going so much into debt, like I'm willing to bet every single person on this panel has thrown money at their passion project without once expecting people to pay them back because they just want to show people that it is possible for change to happen. Financially support your friends, gas your friends up, talk about it on social media. Don't shame them for always talking about the shit they're doing because nobody else is talking about the shit they're doing. Like you gotta gas up the people who are out here creating the stories, not just waiting to benefit from when they succeed. Because like yeah, we're gonna be our own lights and we're gonna support ourselves. But like if you want it to happen sooner, then you better help like tweet Marvel and or tweet Comedy Central and be like, y'all have Loy Lee on yet? Like tweet them every damn day and tell them like all these people are talking about Loy Lee. Who the fuck is Loy Lee? Like tweet Marvel and tell like, yo, you casting Patrick Strange for that new Filipino superhero Jemarc wrote? Like fucking do that shit. Like you got to. I can't.
And it doesn't
that
cost
enough.
anything. It doesn't cost nothing.
We just want you to share our shit. You don't gotta spend money.
We'll take your money. I'll definitely take your money. I'm just
we'll
saying.
Take your money, but like, it doesn't have to. I feel like that was the end right there. We're good. We out here. No, like, but y'all are absolutely correct. And I kind of want to dig a little more into kind of where are you seeing where there could be more work, right? Beyond the general like everything. But where are you seeing that like we've seen some success here and there, but there could definitely be improvement.
I think the way sorry, I apologize. The way the business works, from my understanding, I mean, the people who count the money, we need to be the people counting the money, the people that are greenlighting things. Sure, super important to be behind the camera, the writing, the in front of the camera, but the change is for the people that say, yeah, let's put that budget behind this project. Let's greenlight it. That's what's important. So the people who aren't creative, that parents send them to school to go do accounting or business or whatever it is, like, this is where we need you. This is where you can make a change.
School, right? Like you gotta help make this happen, girl. Like moneyball us.
Exactly.
No, I think that makes perfect perfect sense. Like it has to be, and not only that, right? It also has to do with politics, which is so hard for us as Asian Americans because we were told to keep our heads down. So like getting involved in politics, like talking about political issues, and I'm not talking about at like the Senate or House of Representatives level, which I'm entirely convinced once you get to the federal level for politics, you go through some kind of brainwashing that just makes you like so exhausted that you lose sight of all of your belief systems. I don't know what it is, but there's some like extraterrestrial shit happening.
We could
But
take that
like,
off. We could take that offline. My wife worked on Capitol Hill. We can have that conversation later.
oh,
offline.
we
Yeah,
gotta
this is-
talk. We
listen.
gotta talk. But there's some shit that goes down. Like you have the most idealistic person. The minute they're on Capitol Hill, like some shit happens that just like breaks their spirit, and then they're no longer fighting. But yeah, like getting involved at the local level, especially being a lobbyist, getting involved in activism. Like these are things that we can do to take action, and also, you know, telling stories, which I think is so great about just podcast being a thing, which all of us on here are podcasters, I believe. Jonah, do you have a podcast? You've guessed it on podcasts, but I don't know if you have a podcast.
I did, yeah. We just had one season running in 2020,
There
but
you go.
we haven't continued anything as of right now.
Yeah, so finding affordable way to kind of spread stories and getting them out there. I think it's important to figure out who's money rolling everyone, but also important to like how do we ensure that people are taking the effort to see that like maybe what they're supporting doesn't need as much help from them. Like where's our Snyderverse fans, right? like man,
Yeah.
I wish I had Snyderverse's I wish I had Snyder's white privilege of like, I'm gonna make 2 shitty movies in the DCEU, and then everybody's gonna want me to make another shitty movie and then just love it. Like, oh man, I want that privilege. That sounds amazing.
You know, and we're a people of Asians, all the cultures. We're storytellers. That's how we got history through history. Like that's how we always tell stories. We rich culture, rich stories, and yet all of a sudden we get here, and then it's like, hey, let's just not tell stories. Let's just go, I don't know, whatever, go to college. And it's in our DNA, all of us. It's just a matter of taking that jump and just being like, this is important. My story is important. Let's tell it.
And also, I'm recognizing that Loy, Kuyapi, and I are very big personalities, but we're also men. So please don't let us monopolize the space. If Jonah and Meg, you want to like add stuff, please tell us to shut the fuck up, because we're going to try not to take up space as men. And we're also going to go, I know it's supposed to be ending at 9, but we also started 20 minutes late. So we're still going to keep going. But please tell us.
Yeah, I was going to say, even educators, whether that's in the classroom, you know, whatever medium that is, also within like the Board of Education. I mean, I'm not trying to call out anyone specifically, but having the materials in your classroom to educate students, just seeing themselves in these stories, not just in the media, but also in books, you know, in history, everywhere. Because I feel like it definitely adds so much like a global perspective to your work, to, you know, how people view the world and how people talk to each other. And then therefore it's like a ripple effect going into productions, going into publishing, financing, whatever, policy, anything, any type of medium. Like I feel like it also starts with like education.
I want to add, I think right now, just being in the younger generation, and I also have a younger brother, I think social media representation and just celebrating Asian culture there is very big. I don't know if you guys are in like subtle Asian traits, like all those big like Asian Facebook groups and all, but I think those are great, but I think there needs to be like another level to that. I think they bring up a lot of like great points, but there's like a level deeper. Like sometimes they're just like jokes about Asian culture and, oh, our parents all do this, but what's the next level to that? And how is that relevant to you?
I will say that with that comedy, I didn't realize how many of my experiences growing up were universally like Filipino and universally Asian. Like Kuyapi, I know you experienced this. Jonah, I'm sure you experienced this too. Did you know growing up the dishwasher was like a thing that washed dishes? I thought it was a glorified drying rack. That's a thing. Like I had no idea that was a universal Asian experience.
Yeah.
Right? Like that
it
shit
still
blew
is
my
our
mind.
drying rack for our house. We still don't use it. We use it like once every few months just to save money, right? Like I think even now, because I grew up super frugal, and even though now we have like the money to like do more stuff. We still like are so frugal. We still collect coupons. We still like do all these little things to save money. And I don't know, it's just embedded in me now just because of the way we grew up.
But did you know that it was a dishwasher? That's what I'm saying.
No,
I had
never.
no idea. That shit was like magic. I went to my first white person's family and they're like, you just put it in the dishwasher. The drying rack?
I'm jealous because you guys had a dishwasher. We just had a space where a dishwasher would go, and we would put like rice and other stuff in there. But that's like growing up now. I'm like, wait, oh, that space, that little cupboard space under the counter, that was a dishwasher space.
We have some questions from Facebook, so I would like to turn attention to there really quickly. Clara, if you could type them in here, or Clara, if you wanted to come off and like come on camera and read these out loud, it's really up to you, whatever makes you most comfortable.
I'm gonna go ahead and just use my voice out here. So the first, there's lots of comments on Facebook. There's some sidebar conversations. They're all really interesting. One of the things someone brought up, and I believe it was Kuya who was talking about this in the Marvel universe about, or maybe it was Loy, was talking about the idea of cloning themselves as a sort of a racist trope. Someone's bringing up the fact that, or maybe not the fact, but like the conversation around that particular idea being a part of, I don't know what's the phrase they use? Not Asian storytelling. They're talking about the Monkey King signature move is actually to clone himself. So it's interesting. The reason why they're bringing it up is because it's interesting. It's like, is it something that Asian people brought from a culture perspective that was twisted to mean something else? Is it we're describing it as racist, or is it just the lack of knowledge on both sides? Like, they don't know where it came from and they're using it to their advantage. I thought it was a very interesting point about this.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the trope is that we all look alike. You know, everybody was kung fu fighting. And when we all look alike and the one Asian superhero clones himself, so thousands of him all look alike, everybody was kung fu fighting, it triggers me.
Anyone else?
Yeah, triggers me.
Yeah.
A lot of it has to be rooted in who is the creator too, right? And I think that's the biggest thing. And I think that's something that we're learning like societally, is the difference between cultural appropriation and appreciation. Like, I was born and raised in Japan. I grew up around Japanese people. I was taught certain behaviors and ideals and stuff from Japanese people while still being Filipino and while still being American. So like, if I were to create something, it would be coming from that place of like cultural appreciation, understanding the roots. Now, if I were to, and so like for something like that, like, was the character made by somebody who was actually referencing that and like actually paying homage to that, or they're like, oh, Wukong clones himself, that's a neat thing, and like the conversation stops there. It can get very complex and challenging for sure.
When it comes down to it as a comic, as an observer, and I do my best to do my research, but the optics, you kind of just go with the optics. What are the Asian tropes? What does everybody think? What are the stereotypes? Easy as that. What are the stereotypes, and where do these things fall in place? And that's where I get triggered. So, sure, should I read Journey to the West? Maybe. Do I care enough? No, because it doesn't really affect my life that much, as much as like the things that people randomly say. It's like, hey, if you go up to a coworker or anyone that's not Asian, you go, hey, you look like Idris Elba or whoever. You're like, hey, you legitimately look like somebody. What's their retort? Oh, you look like Jackie Chan. You look like Bruce Lee. Do I? Do I really?
Not to be that guy, but Laura, you do kind of look like Jen. No, I'm just kidding.
Listen, Zuko.
Oh, that's the highest compliment.
I loved you the debut, man.
It's funny that this conversation is brought up about this power. I actually had another Asian friend of mine. Actually, Loy Rollins hit me up.
Dope.
Amazing photographer out of LA that I met through Loy. There's this new show called Invincible that's on Amazon Prime, and I love it because it has an amazing cast, and where we have oh my God, it's Stephen Yeun. There we go. Yep. Stephen Yeun playing the title character, and Sandra Oh as his mother in the character. So I'm loving that representation, and as well as the rest of the cast. But there's this one character who's this Asian character, duplicates, and Rollins hit me up to find out more about that, and because that struck a nerve with him, and I completely understood that. I don't recall, because I read the comic books that birthed this animated series. So I couldn't really talk much on it, but I could understand what he's saying. And so, yeah, Laura, you're familiar with that as well, with duplicated invisible.
So one of the sub heroes, she duplicates, she does martial arts, and she also she has sex with like somebody who has got a girlfriend, the white guy who's got a girlfriend. And it's like, that trope is very strange. Steve Yoon, Sandra Oh, her husband, their father is white. There's a lot of tropes that triggering, but yeah, I find it very interesting. It's like we can't have a win without getting kicked in the shins.
It's complicated on it, yeah, because there's so much representation going on in it, but yeah, there's just some still problematic things that are occurring,
like cloning. Like a cloning, is that
with why duplicate character?
Duplicate, yeah. Why is that a thing? Twice apparently in this case.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad, and that brings it back to, right, like, where are things successful? Where can things use more work? You know, we got to win, and then they kicked us in the shin, or like they finally let us kick the football this time, like Charlie Brown style, and the next time they still pull it out from under us. Meg, I saw you came off mute. Did you have some thoughts as well?
Oh, sorry, no, not yet.
No worries at all. I just want to make sure. I'm trying to be very mindful of that. There's an app about like who's taking up space, and it's literally like when the guy starts talking, you tap the guy, and then when it's not a guy talking, you tap the other. And I'm trying really hard to be mindful of that.
You have a comment about that. Like, where would, other than like writers tackling that issue, where else, like, because I know other people could add in their own opinions, saying like this would add more to the story if it was this way. Do you think it's more of like a casting thing, from a casting perspective? Let's say, like, I'm just trying to figure out, like, if I, like, as a writer, if I were to write something like that, but for some reason had a duplicate villain, and then the casting people brought in, you know, an array of actors, actresses that were from all different races, but I want to be representative of Asian culture. Like, is that, I don't know. I don't even know what kind of question I'm asking. I'm just trying to think, like, I
feel you on that, because that's kind of how I felt when Rollins asked me about that particular character. I was like, we got some representation on that team, but is it continuing on that trope of like we said earlier with like the Monkey King? And I think at one point Shang-Chi kind of had like that power where he could duplicate himself or something like that. So I'm with you. I'm confused in regards, we want that representation, but then we don't want it, you know.
We want to be in the room, but but it's coming at a cost.
Yeah.
Like, we can't just be in the room and be there and be part. We have to, like, oh yeah, like, it's always the same thing. I don't know where the trope comes from, but it's repetitive and boring.
Well, it's about nuance in writing ultimately, right? Like, one of my favorite rom-coms is Always Be My Maybe. And the reason for that is there's great representation. There are moments in it that represent what it's like growing up as a Chinese American, what it's like growing up as a Korean American, but it's not the whole deal. And I think that's a really important distinction in any kind of storytelling, is that, like, if you're going to have Asian Americans or a specific type of Asian American like represented in your story, showcase the experiences, because that's real. That makes the character feel real to us. Peter Parker was real to Patrick because it was somebody who came from nothing, who gained great power and great responsibility, but was still struggling to make money, struggling to make ends meet. Write characters for that for us. Write characters like from a Filipino American perspective. Like, I'm writing, I said it before, I was like, as a joke, but I actually am writing like a Filipino superhero who, he's Filipino American, he feels disconnected from his culture, but that's not his whole deal, right? It's having aspects of that represent and make the person full-fledged. And there's this weird thing in writing where, and I'm going to make sure I phrase this correctly, it's like white people have the privilege of being rated solely on their own achievements and failures. And as soon as you slap skin tone on somebody, as soon as you slap LGBTQIA identity on somebody, as soon as you slap a different gender on somebody, it's like brain death. Like someone's like, I don't know, I suddenly forget everything about writing deep and meaningful characters. Like if it would help you write a character and just make them a blob, and then after the fact add their race, their gender, their sexuality, and then see how that maybe changes certain aspects of the character without changing the character's full character arc and representation. So I haven't seen Invincible. I know it's an animated series. So my question for that would be like, sure, okay, Duplicate has this power, but that was a character and how they're represented in the comic. So where was the nuance shown in the animated series? Were they speaking with a horribly racist accent? Was their entire identity just a long laundry list of Chinese stereotypes? Or was it just like, this character happens to have this ability, right? So like, I think those are the things that like are worth investigating and exploring. You're muted, Loy.
Hold on. Yep. Am I okay? Yeah. I mean, with that, it's like it's animated, right? She could have been anyone. It could have been anyone, but that's what they decided. They're like, oh, the Asian character is gonna do this, and she has like 4 lines in the first 4 episodes.
Yeah.
That's it. It didn't seem. It just seemed lazy to me. Did I do the backgrounds? Did I do the research? No. Why? Because I'm already triggered. But it's one of those things where it's like, it's not necessary. It wasn't like they got an Asian actress to voice her. They're just gonna write it. It's a cartoon. You can write anyone. But that's what they chose. They said, yeah, let's greenlight that.
So I do want to ask you, Meg, just because you're the only panelist we have on here who's from Canada, and Asian American experiences, I mean, just American experiences can be very different. And like specifically, what part of Canada are you in? If you could let us know.
Yeah, I'm in Vancouver.
Vancouver. So you're on West Coast, right?
Yeah.
Vancouver is West Coast Canada. Okay, so that's even more different. I know that I have a lot of friends in Toronto who are basically dealing with their own Trump right now, like legitimately. And so I'd love to know a little bit more. I mean, obviously you said that you had those experiences growing up, but as far as just like day-to-day life, have you found that you've experienced much of the stuff that we've all talked about here today, as far as like someone chasing you down with a truck, or people putting you in this box of expecting you to act and behave a certain way, even as a young adult, would be great to hear about.
Yeah, I actually feel very fortunate because I think I grew up in a neighborhood that's actually the majority feels like Asian people. So a lot of the people I know are also immigrants who came over here. Their parents came over to give us a better future. And Vancouver, we're very close to UBC, so University of British Columbia. And there's a joke that the acronym is University of a Billion Chinese because there's just so many Chinese people at this university. So interestingly for me, I actually almost feel like a majority in my city, which is very interesting. But I still see microaggressions here and there. So it's really eye-opening for me to hear about the stories of like other like Asians in other parts of North America, because I haven't experienced that before actually. But I do have friends who live in like cities a bit farther away from the main city of Vancouver, like Abbotsford and more of like the suburban areas. And they said they've definitely experienced it, where they grew up very, very whitewashed. Like they didn't know what anime was until they were in like university, and that's when people were like, oh, have you heard of anime? And they're like, oh no, I didn't know that was a thing. And so I find that very interesting. But my experience is definitely very unique, and I think I'm fortunate to have that.
I think that's something worth celebrating, to be honest. Like, no need to feel ashamed about coming on a panel like this and being like, I had a great time. Like, because that's great. Like there was somebody who said, like, it was specifically about trans stories. They're like, I want to hear so many trans stories that it becomes boring. And I think that that's a great standard to live by for anything. Like, I was so excited when Crazy Rich Asians came out because it was a mediocre movie, but like it like almost opened a door. Like, yes, Asians can finally make mediocre movies. We don't have to make art. Like, please give us permission to make shit. Like, sometimes I don't want to, like, I don't want a Parasite. I don't want a Snowpiercer. Sometimes I just want to make a really shitty movie and then have people like criticize me, but then they'll still watch the next thing I put out, right? And that's I think that's an unreasonable expectation placed on anyone who's not a straight white guy.
Yeah, I just want to make a movie that you'll find for $4, 2 for 1 at the bottom of the Walmart bargain bin.
Yes!
Like, I want to be able to do that.
Yes, let me release my Monkey Bones movie. That's all I want, which is something you owe. For anyone who doesn't know what Monkey Bones is, it's a Brendan Fraser movie that's always in the Walmart bin.
2 for 5.
2 for 5. Monkey Bones and the devil one. I forget its name.
And Honey. Don't
And
forget Honey.
And Honey. Yes. To be fair, I do love Brendan Fraser, and he is a treasure, and we need to treat him as such, because like that man's been through so much. But like the dude was in some bad movies, and that's okay.
Can we celebrate? In that case, we celebrate Nicolas Cage too, because
Oh, I love me. I unironically love Nicolas Cage. Like for real though, he could just put out dumpster fire after dumpster fire,
he's
like,
doing that.
and I want us to be treated that way, right? Like I want us to have the pleasure and the privilege to put out dumpster fire out of dumpster fire, and we will have our cult followings. So we've talked about representation in media, and we've talked about representation in politics. We've talked about representation in education.
Hold on 1 second. Sorry to interrupt. Jonah, you were saying something.
I'm so sorry. I looked down. Go ahead.
No. Okay, I was just gonna say yes, create movies and create content, but also, I lost my train of thought. But also make sure it's quality up to your standards, so people can also take us seriously. Because I feel like sometimes people just put stuff out there and it's great. Like I'm all for it, but then there could be the tendency for people to not to kind of see our work as just average. And work is still work. Like definitely put it out there no matter what, and you got to start from somewhere. But just want to put that out there.
Yes. So like I said, I want us to have the privilege to make shit, but I'm sorry, people, we still got a long way to go. You best be making the best shit you've ever made in your life. I want that turd polished and golden, and I want somebody to kiss it and be okay. Like, I'm sorry, we're unfortunately in this position where we have to make bomb ass shit for people to take us seriously.
I watched the 6 episodes of Dr. Ken. I'm not doing it again, guys.
Oh no, I can't believe you put yourself through that.
You got, because it was either that, like literally we don't have options. It's like, did you watch Dr. Ken or did you watch Fresh Off the Boat? That's it. Or Ken's Convenience. The best show to convey the Asian American experience is Canadian. So that's interesting.
That makes sense, Meg. Like that might be the reason why. As much something about Asian American, but Canadian Asian
Canadian.
I don't know why I'm saying Canadian Asian. Don't mind me, but like that's what it is. Apparently, y'all just have everything. You have free healthcare and shows that actually represent our experiences. Damn it.
That's interesting. I actually think the first time I felt like I was represented was just watching Wong Fu on YouTube. And I was like, oh, wow, this is like, I finally feel understood. Because like when I was growing up, I always watched like cartoons and all those are like so white and, people hang out in squads at the mall, like going on weekend, like fishing trips and stuff. And I was like, I can't relate to any of this. And then Wong Fu comes along. I'm like, wow, I finally feel understood.
Ooh, okay. So we're coming up on time, but I do want to talk about that huge struggle of Wong Fu. Because I think this is important, is that like representation is so important to us, but we have to tread this fine line of making sure we're not the Asian American production company or the Asian American this or the Asian American that. And like, I loved watching Wong Fu growing up. And like, I love that they solely worked with Asian American, not just Asian American, but like Asian actors and actresses and producers and writers. But then like no one outside of the community would watch their stuff. Because they're like, oh, that's the Asian community production thing. And like, that's so hard. That's so hard not being able to take pride in your community to its fullest extent. And like, just having that knowledge of like, we're going to give these opportunities out. But then in the back of your mind, like that means there's all these other people who aren't going to engage with our shit, which sucks.
I think it's important to be the foundation. We all want to stand in the sunlight, but we all don't want to be the brick that builds the foundation. And Wong Fu, I mean, how many millions of views did they get and how many millions of people did they inspire to be like, oh, I can do this? Like before that, it was like, I can only do X, Y, Z. No, this is an option. And I don't think I'm going to be the greatest comedian. I don't think I'll be in a Hall of Fame of comedy, but I would like to be one of the people that inspired one that is. I think that branding, I'm the Asian American comedian. Why? Because it's just easier to find me that way. That is
and
part of the
Joe Coy.
part of the struggle. It's part of the struggle of taking that beachhead. You know, you gotta lay the foundation.
Yeah. Like, I mean, YouTube was so great for us, right? Like Wong Fu Productions, Happy Slip, Kev Jumba, Niga Higa, way back in the day, like they all walked so we could run.
Amen.
Regardless of whatever problematic shit they've done since then, because I'm gonna be honest, I haven't kept up with them since I was in high school. So this is solely based on the fact that they created shit and then inspired a bunch of other people to also make shit.
Do you think that you would have a slightly different path or a different path altogether if you had not seen them in high school?
Oh fuck yes. I started making YouTube videos around when they started making YouTube videos because I saw them making YouTube videos. So
I didn't see them
absolutely.
until I was almost 30. So
Yeah.
I think my life would have changed drastically if I could have saw that happening as an option.
You could have started sooner. Like,
I mean, not
That's-
really. I would, when they came out 2008, 2009, I was 28, 29.
I mean, that's still a couple years sooner. I think it came out like 05, 06, to be fair, but I get what you're saying.
YouTube debuted in 2006.
Yeah, I think they were like there right at the beginning. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. Okay, so we're coming up on time here. So before everybody in the audience leaves, and before you all watching this playback at home, yes, I see you, leaves, let's talk about how you can support all of our lovely panelists. And while we're at it, actually, anybody who's still in this Zoom call who happen to be in the lightning talks, I would actually like you to come on camera as well. Because I wanted, like, if we're going to be talking about supporting Asian Americans and stopping AAPI hate, it needs to start with supporting AAPI joy. And a lot of that comes in the creative process and the things we're hustling to put out. And if you genuinely believe that you want to help promote change, start with the people hustling. Like, don't wait till they get big. You know what happens when people get big? They get petty. I already know that about myself. Like, if I get big and some of these people come rolling up on me like, hey, Jemarc, I'll be like, you ignored my shit for years. I'll be so petty. Like, I ain't gonna help you out. Help me out. Like, support me now so that I'll give you all the love and compassion you want when I get big-headed later on. That's all I'm saying. But I'm gonna go in the order I'm kind of seeing people on my screen here. So let's go ahead and start with Meg. Please tell us where people can find and support you. And then also Clara, and also type it in the chat. And then Clara, if you could share that out later on, I think that'd be wonderful. But
Yeah.
yes.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love for you guys to check out my podcast if you like. It's called I'm in My 20s, and the whole premise is just like figuring out our 20s. I started this when I turned 22 because I felt very confused about turning this age, and it's been a year. You can find me on Instagram. It's just at I'm in my 20s, as well as on my website. That would be my name, megkuang.com, and I'm in my /podcast. And yeah, I can share the links in the chat as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Kuya P, all your 50 billion things, baby. Do it. Make us proud.
Man, okay. So thank you for asking that, because I was gonna ask of that of everyone. I would love to share and support all y'all and have y'all on the Nerds of Color and NRW and just show that love, man. And thank you again, Jemarc, and the Community Cooperative, who I think is you said is behind this. Appreciate you guys for giving us this forum. First off, before I tell y'all about me, I just want to recommend that again, like we said, we need to be behind the scenes. We need to be financing, producing, writing. But just like on networks like this, like we connected through Facebook. There's so many other amazing Facebooks beyond just that one that you had mentioned earlier that find it targeted Facebook. I'm part of this Southeast Asian filmmakers group. I'm part of this Filipinx filmmakers group. And we are there. I feel like there's a renaissance going on. As much as the drama is out there in the world, we are shining. We are turning, we are creating, our existence is our resistance, and we are coming together. There's so much stuff that is happening in the works, and I'm just so proud and so happy and motivated that if I had an iPhone, I'd be on Clubhouse. Because everybody's like, yo, you need to be on Clubhouse. And that's another great group as well. Like, get on Clubhouse if you have an iPhone. But I think I wouldn't sleep if I had an iPhone, because I'm just so motivated and so ready to just deliver. And that is gonna, that to me will help with all this hate that's in the world by just showing that representation. And I just can't recommend that enough. So I just want to leave that with people to just build, and like, I'm gonna network with everybody here, and I can't wait to just do that. And let's just shine, y'all. So follow me at Strange Since 1977 and at Temple Far East. That's my Twitter and IG personal, but at the Nerds of Color, everything and nerdsofcolor.org. as well as at the NRW and at New Release Wednesday, and I'll put it in the chat. And again, this is a true pleasure to collaborate with all of y'all, and I look forward to supporting you guys, and let's build. Thank you.
Does the Show Pal Show have its own hashtag at all, or is that under?
Oh yeah, at Show Pal Show as well. I'm sorry, at Show Pal Show.
My man's made a whole show and was like,
Man,
I
also
do
got
too
a
many
charity,
things.
Cost Love, man. It's just too much stuff going on.
Man,
but
it's like
yes.
Cost Love by Comic Con. Also,
Yeah,
by
you
the
can
way,
find it through the Nerds
I
of
am
Color.
the actual president. Like, it's fine. We get it. You do everything.
Thank you, guys.
Jonah, where can people find you? I know you're in a rebranding period, but where can people
Yes.
find you in the meantime?
Yes, I am currently not on social media. I am not really on the internet right now as I'm working on a couple of projects, but I'll type in my website below. It is under construction in the meantime, but my email is on there, keeping it real with the email. You can try to snail mail me, but let's just do email for right now. And I am also is everyone, okay, they are putting their stuff in the chat. So I'm like putting it on my Excel sheet so I can make sure to do that. Follow everyone.
Oh, bless you, Jonah. You're the most organized. Why did you have to leave me? Jonah was my marketing intern for a week and a half, and then she's like my day job, which is fair, but I'm gonna keep guilt tripping you because it's funny. And I'm Asian, so I'm good at that. But no, it's okay. All the love.
Yeah. Also, thank you to everyone. Oh my gosh, this panel, even the lightning talks beforehand, I was listening to them. They were really, really inspirational. So thank you to everyone. This was such a joy to be on.
Yes, we're gonna share this recording out once I upload it to the We Are Heroes. So just for context, Pat, it's through the Community Co-op and then also We Are Heroes Productions, which is my company. But this will be live on the We Are Heroes Productions YouTube channel, which is also I have to fix it and rebrand it. So keep an eye out for that. Loy Lee.
Hey, Loy Lee comedy on everything. That's I have a podcast, the Short Pale and Handsome podcast. I'm doing a couple different things, but for the most part, you can find me there. YouTube, Loy Lee. Wait, hold on, wait a second. Oh,
I thought you said hold on because the sirens.
Loy Lee comedy, basically on everything. There it is. Short Pale and Handsome podcast. I knew this sign would be useful at some point. But yeah, that's what I got going on. And if stuff opens up, the comedy clubs, venues, I should be on the road as soon as that starts happening. So hopefully I can be in your town, Vancouver. I was supposed to be there last year, but I'll be there at some point.
Loy's a professional. I'm a hobbyist. So if Loy's ever in your area and I'm in your area, I might try to hop in there. But like, I ain't trying to steal a spotlight. I just enjoy stand-up.
If I'm in your area, you are hanging out with me. Don't get that.
Let's hang out. I miss you. Could you tell us a little more real quick before we move to the next person? What is the Short Pale and Handsome podcast about?
It's Short Pale and Handsome. It's basically just me, the day in the life. I talk about 30 minutes about what's going on, talk about comedy, and just basically my experiences. It's gives people an opportunity to get to know me a little bit more. They might see me on stage and go, "Oh, that's cool," but like, what is you outside the jokes? I do my best to try to make it entertaining and do my best to kind of spearhead the stereotypes in the way that I see fit on a daily basis.
I can't stress enough. Loy's funny as shit. So y'all need to go tune into his stuff and then like get him up there with Joe Coy so that eventually it'll just be a bunch of Asian American comedians and then be like, all right, bet they're just comedians. We don't have to add the label.
Yeah.
That's the dream. That's the dream.
With not getting into a different conversation, as being an Asian American, I think that it's actually easier to stand out in a crowd where you go, oh, I'm the Asian American this, or, you're niching down. So I'm trying my best to spearhead stereotypes, but also take advantage of being Asian American in social media.
Oh, I can't stress enough, y'all. Like, if you're an Asian American in your community, in your specific thing you're doing, like own that shit. It may seem like you're taking advantage of something, but people are already stereotyping you. Like, own that shit. I went to a predominantly white college, and my wife can tell you this. I was in every piece of promotional material because whenever they're like, we need photos of students, I'm like, they're gonna put my ass on there. I'm Filipino. I'm brown. Like, they need to show good optics, and like, Oh, Clara and I went to college together. Clara knows I was in everything. I didn't give a shit.
I get invited to panels for the diversity. Like, oh, well, hey, we need an Asian person that can do a panel. I am that guy, and I have zero shame when it comes to that.
yeah, get your brand out there. Like, some people are gonna try to shame you. Some people from our own communities are gonna try to shame you, but like, what the fuck are they doing? That's all I'm saying.
It doesn't matter.
Awesome. So let's move on next. Next here I have the lovely Lex. Please tell us, where can people find and support you?
Hi, I am everywhere. You can find me on Instagram, and I also have my own website. It's also under construction, firstandlastname.com. I am currently a dancer and choreographer, and I am, I mean, it's kind of piggybacking off of, there's a lot of Asians that are dancers and choreographers right now, but I think in particular my focus right now is getting more women choreographers at the forefront, and you know, not to be objectified and in this dancing space, but outside of that I am aspiring to act more, and also like sing more, and then writing more. So if you guys have any opportunities, feel free to shoot them my way, because it is rough out here trying to get into stuff. But yeah, I will put my links in the chat.
Now that we're Facebook friends, I'm gonna message you so we can set up a time to shoot some dance videos. And I need you to bring friends, because I ain't know nobody in Philly anymore. Or period, because I just moved here. But like, I have all the choreography in my brain, and they're all artistic and creative film videos, and I just need people to dance in them. So we'll talk.
Yeah, if you guys need dancing or for anything, or even outside of dancing, I'm here. I've been an assistant on shoots, like playing music or like, you know, running errands. I'm your girl. I got you.
Also, I'm not just targeting Lex. It's just that I found out she lives in South Jersey, so we're a lot closer to each other. That's the only reason. Everyone here, if we're close, like, let's work together. I'm sorry. Lisa, Lisa, tell us where people can find you and the wonderful things you do that people need to throw money.
So you can find me on Instagram at Lisa Lam I am, and so I'm an actor and writer, and I want to reiterate what Lex said, like, you know, like, if you guys have any projects, you know, hit me up. Yeah, it was really, I loved this panel today. It was like so fun. I learned so much.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'll go last. I forget. I keep introducing all the amazing and beautiful people I have the pleasure of knowing in my life. I am Jemarc Accento. I run We Are Heroes Productions LLC. It's actually my 4th company I've ever run, and my most successful. You learn through failure, right? And right now we're most well known for Tabletop for the End of the World, which is a dual narrative actual play podcast. So it's a D&D game played within a radio drama, and it's all about spreading joy and love, but also it's critiquing capitalism. And we're actually currently working on casting for season 2. Even though season 1 hasn't posted yet, I'm getting into that production mindset of we're going to work on future projects while one's ongoing, which is great. But season 2 is going to be all about just radical fanaticism over either a zealot or a god or cultism, and racism. And I'm very scared about producing it because I want to do it justice and I want to do it well and do it right. But we are recasting for it. I had a long talk with my production team, and the things that were most important to me, because you work with what you got to start out, but now that we've grown and have like thousands of listeners every month, which is crazy. I want to make sure that we have a diverse cast going in, and I want to make sure we also have people who can pick up some shit. Guys, I do too much. I don't know how Kuya P does so much with the 50 things he's doing. I'm just doing, like, I'm filling every hat in one product. So Kuya P, you're not allowed to audition just because you're too busy, man. It's because I love you, but like,
Bruh, I know,
I can't
right?
burn you out more.
But I want
But
to.
if-
I want to rep.
But if anybody's interested in auditioning, we have a Google sheet for it. We're looking for people who can act, because acting is a big component, and want to play some tabletop games, and also can add an extra skill set to it. Because like I said, I compose the music, I edit, I literally taught myself how to make music. I do all the podcast editing and sound remastering, and I also design all of our merchandise. And I did run our social media until a certain unnamed someone broke my heart. I'm just kidding, Jonah. But like, I would love to work with people who can be equally as passionate, who want to get the word out there. And my hope for this company, I'm the last one talking, and I helped put this together, so I'm gonna talk longer. My hope, we are Heroes Productions is born out of that story I told during this panel. When I was a kid, all the stories I wrote were about white straight men or the protagonists, and I was inserting myself. Like I couldn't even insert myself as me. I had to be a straight white man, right? And so the whole point of this is it's being the foundation, right? Like I will pour my money and my heart and my soul into getting my dumbass projects popular and getting notoriety for We Are Heroes, so that eventually I can throw money at people who can tell their stories and make them great. So if anyone wants to audition or wants to get involved and help grow this production company so that we can then tell your stories, please hit me up. That would be absolutely wonderful.
Can I add one thing real quick? I'm sorry, Jemarc.
God damn it! No, yeah, go ahead.
Because of everybody that is just amazing here. I don't know if you all are also activists as well. You know, our representation is so very important to me. I am part of a group called the APAC, Asian Pacific American Artists for Change. We get together like every other Saturday. It's filled with a bunch of writers, actors, just a bunch of Asian creators that are just killing it in various fields of industry. But we get together to just talk about how we can just rep and what we can do to promote people. It's an amazing group of people, of creatives. And yeah, it's just so awesome. I just wanted to put that out there. If you guys hit me up, I'll put my email in the chat as well. But I would love to invite everyone here to continue on what we're doing here by building and representing there in that group as well, because we would love to have you guys. The more the merrier. It's about community, and that's how we succeed. So I apologize, change the subject, but I think y'all are beautiful, and I want y'all to get down with that as well.
Yeah, Lisa, I saw you raised your hand. What's up?
Yeah, I raised my hand so nobody would ignore me. No, because sometimes I forget stuff. I wanted to say that I'm part of a nonprofit called Recasting the Movies, and we explore and champion for like better representation for you know, in mainstream media. So so please visit us. There's a website. It's on Instagram, Recasting the Movies, and I think we're on Facebook. So yeah, it was like the spotlight was on me, and I was like, I don't remember what to say. So yes.
And Recasting Movies is putting on a production of Frankenstein that actually Lex, Lisa, and I are all in. So just saying, if y'all want to see it, it's going to be on Zoom, and we're working really hard and making sure we're acting good and wordsing good. So we could share those links under the co-op page as well. But yeah, I think unless anybody had any other last words, I'm down. Like we could talk for hours, right? That's part of the like, oh, we're finally connecting with people like us. Let's just talk all day. But anyone else have anything they want to say? Y'all can't see them in the audience, but everyone's just like putting up signs like, Jemarc, you're amazing. You're so beautiful and perfect. I'm like, oh, thank you. Okay, well, you all are, oh, Van Loyle's about to roast the shit out of me. He came off mute. I was like, oh, shit. But no, you all are absolutely wonderful. Thank you again for coming. Thank you, those of you who came participate in the lightning talks. And for those of you who are watching this playback at home and sat through this entire thing, thank you as well. It starts with education. And education also comes from just like willing to come to the table and listen and learn. So thank you for that. And then Clara's gonna stop the recording, and I'm just gonna, and being live.